who have been brought there by our government in cooperation with the city of Denver, outside of which Aurora is, and some influx of thousands. I read an estimated 8,000 Venezuelan immigrants into this small town, and they've taken over some 3 apartment complexes, and there are serious criminal problems. I mean, serious criminal problems. We covered this before after Chris Rufo wrote a great piece in City Journal about this about a month ago, along with Christina Buttons. It's called Chaos in Aurora. It's dated September 10th, for those of you who want to Google it. And it talks about, they write in this piece about the amount of crime that's gone up as a result. They got their hands on a confidential legal report based on witness reports that these apartments saw a string of crimes, including trespassing, assault, extortion, drug use, illegal firearm possession, human trafficking, and the sexual abuse of minors. And then there's been a localized spike in crime around the apartment complexes. So this has been in the news because Trump has raised it. It's sort of another like Springfield, or you mentioned what's happening in Pennsylvania earlier, MBD, and now here we are in Aurora, Colorado.
And Trump is raising it not just because it's consistent with his lifelong politics, but because it is polling well. People are concerned about illegal immigration at higher levels than we've seen in 20 years.
These are real life people being affected by these immigration policies that Biden and Harris have. And this is what happened because the mayor of Aurora, who's a Republican, who doesn't like Trump, he lost his bid for Congress. Trump didn't like him. They were feuding. Got out there and was like, it's a problem, but it's limited. And she brought that up in an interview with J.D. Vance. Look what happened.
So do you support Donald Trump making those claims that the Republican mayor says were grossly exaggerated?
President Trump was actually in Aurora, Colorado, talking to people on the ground. And what we're hearing, of course, Martha, is that people are terrified by what has happened with some of these Venezuelan gangs.
Senator Vance, I'm going to stop you because I know exactly what happened.
Martha.
I'm going to stop you. The incidents were limited to a handful of apartment conflicts.
That's incredibly obnoxious when you ask someone a question and then you stop them 10 seconds in. Is Martha Raddatz going to cry on network TV when Kamala Harris loses like she did when Hillary Clinton lost in 2016?
Apartment complexes, and the mayor said our dedicated police officers have acted on those concerns. A handful of problems.
Only, Martha, do you hear yourself? Only a handful of apartment complexes in America were taken over by Venezuelan gangs, and Donald Trump is the problem and not Kamala Harris's open border. Americans are so fed up with what's going on, and they have every right to be. And I really find this exchange, Martha, sort of interesting because you seem to be more focused with nitpicking everything that Donald Trump has said rather than acknowledging that apartment complexes in the United States of America are being taken over by violent gangs.
Okay, let's just end that with they did not invade or take over the city, as Donald Trump said. I want to move on to
just a few apartment complexes, no big deal.
A few apartment complexes that the mayor did not seem was invading the entire city.
She doesn't care about any of the crimes I just listed. And you know why she doesn't care, Charlie? You do know why. It's because Martha Raddatz, for at least the past 7 years, has lived in a house she paid $2.125 million for. It's a vintage home on a coveted block in Arlington, Virginia. Would you look at this? It's an estate. That's her home. It's a damn estate. Built in 1900. Look at this. Martha Raddatz does not have to worry about the Venezuelan gangs coming in and committing sexual assaults of minors, because she's in the toniest part of one of the toniest towns in all of America with her many, many millions.
I mean, look, there is obviously a reasonable debate to be had about many things in this country, but whether or not Venezuela...
Okay, so I noticed a lot of live streams were glitching yesterday, so I hope today's stream doesn't glitch nearly as bad. All right, let's... wow. I see Mark Halperin here on Jesse Waters' show. So let's see what the heck that is about? I'm curious.
And remember, it's America Now and Forever. Jesse is next.
Welcome to Jesse Waters Prime Time. Tonight,
for the first time in 32 years in this poll, it shows that Republicans are beating Democrats straight up. There is a leak in the balloon here in the Kamala Harris campaign.
The Kamala bubble bursting.
This is part of a long-standing trend of young black men moving away from the Democratic Party.
Identity politics backfiring on Democrats.
And it never fits quite right.
Never fits quite right.
The incidents were limited to a handful of apartment complexes.
Do you hear yourself? Only a handful of apartment complexes in America were taken over by Venezuelan gangs, and Donald Trump is the problem?
What the heck is happening to the media?
I'm going to stop you.
Plus,
they want to cancel Columbus. They want to cancel you.
We're in the cancel culture, so, you know, it is what it is.
Democrats haven't felt this badly since Biden bombed the debate. The party is leaking like crazy. Anxiety, despair is the mood in Washington. The Harris campaign is stuck in the mud. And behind the scenes, Democrats are worried she stalled and her so-called lead has evaporated.
Vice President Kamala Harris had a 5-point lead in our last poll taken a month ago, right after the debate. That lead has all but evaporated, Willie. Take a look at this new head-to-head matchup. 48% to 48%. That is what we call a deadlocked race.
At this point in the election, Hillary was up 7. Biden was up 9. The betting markets of Trump's chance of winning is better than 50-50. And the battlegrounds are all tied up. So if the polls are as wrong as they usually are, we could know the winner on election night. Democrats are jittery. Trump's numbers are historic.
And the bottom line is this. At this particular hour, if you believe the polling, Donald Trump's going to put up the best performance with black voters since Richard Nixon back in 1960. Not 68, since 1960. That's 64 years ago. Among Hispanic voters, Donald Trump's going to put up the best performance for Republicans since 2004 and George W. Bush.
The media is preparing for the worst. They're wargaming a Trump sweep. Newsweek is even throwing around the L word. Landslide. 3 weeks until Election Day, and it's already started. The panicked phone calls.
Concern in Wilmington and greater concern amongst Democratic elected officials who I hear from daily, asking me what I know, because they know I know some stuff, and telling me explicitly and through their questions, they are worried, okay? Doesn't mean she won't win, but that's how we head into the weekend, okay? Democrats are worried about where things stand.
Democrat insiders are growing worried that the euphoria over Harris's entry into the race hasn't translated. They say she hasn't given voters enough reason to vote for her, and she's feeling the pressure. Barack sent her on a media blitz, and she said she was no different than Biden. And now the Harris campaign is changing strategies again. After snubbing the Fox debate, now Kamala is going to be sitting down with Bret Baier this Wednesday. All week, Kamala is going to be playing defense. She'll be campaigning only in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan. Her map is shrinking, but she claims she has faith.
It is easy in these moments of crisis to question our faith, to sometimes lose our faith for a moment, because what we see is so hard to see that we lose faith or a vision of those things we cannot see but must know.
I don't know what she just said. So after calling on the Messiah to scold wavering black men, Democrats are letting loose the comeback kid. But there's one problem. Nobody recognizes him. All white guys look alike, I know. And after Bill Clinton got shortchanged at McDonald's, he sabotaged her campaign at a rally. We'll have more on that later. But Democrats think someone else is sabotaging her campaign. Joe Biden. Insiders believe that Biden still holds resentment over how he was forced out, and he wants to remind people who's the boss. Now, just on Friday, he told Harris to hush up.
The fact of the matter is that we're in a situation where, well, we're going to have to, I know I'm going to go to the vice president in a second. She's my boss here.
That's a trippy song.
We're going to be, hang on a second, Madam Vice
Sure.
President.
10 sources, 10, tell Axios that the relationship between Kamala's campaign and the White House has been increasingly fraught and awkward. Senior Biden aides are still wounded by the coup. NBC says Biden personally was stung when Harris used the "I'm not Joe Biden" line at the debate. Now, Harris insiders say they need to grow up. They're too much in their feelings. But they hate that Biden keeps bigfooting them. One person in the middle of it says the White House is lacking someone in the room thinking first and foremost about how things would affect the campaign. You know, Biden might want to let Kamala know that Israel's going to bomb Iran at any minute. Just a heads up, Madam Vice President, don't want this to be a surprise. And Harris's handlers are pressuring her to throw Joe under the bus and do whatever she needs to do to win. But Kamala can't do it because she's been a machine politician her whole life, and she's only gotten ahead by kissing up to the party boss. Even though she's kind of the party boss herself now, she knows she didn't earn it, so she can't act like a boss. And she's scared of blasting Biden, even if it helps her win, because no one F's with a Biden. Any Democrat who's gone against Joe didn't last long. Look at Gold Bar Bob. Look at Eric Adams.
Chris Rufo has a damning series of tweets about how much Kamala Harris plagiarized her book on smart thinking about crime. It was truly trashy. And yeah, Saturday Night Live did a pretty devastating hit on Joe and Kamala Harris.
Family.
And if she throws him under the bus, then Joe goes after her to no win.
Name something that you keep in your glove compartment. Oh, VP Harris.
Steve, look, I was raised in a middle-class family, all right?
Oh, here we go.
Okay, my mother raised my sister and me, all right? Yeah. She worked hard and saved up.
Yeah, uh-huh.
And we had a second mother, too.
Okay. Did that mother have a glove compartment?
A small business owner named Miss Shelton.
Okay, we got that. Something that you keep in your glove compartment.
Oh, a Glock, Steve, a big old Glock.
So they know it's a sinking ship, and the media has been given the green light to ridicule her. And they keep going. Watch.
Campaign has raised $1 billion.
Oh, my Lord. How are you not winning by a landslide?
That's a question I scream into my pillow every morning.
Kamala raised $1 billion in 3 months, and she's still the underdog.
So I got my latest COVID booster this afternoon and my flu shot, so I'm expecting to feel pretty poorly tomorrow, so might as well go live today while I'm still standing on my feet. Oh, more good stuff here from Can't Turn It Off.
She lacks confidence and is seemingly terrified to take any unrehearsed or unvetted policy questions. Harris is also a member of the Biden-Harris administration.
Okay, let me see if I can get to the subject topic. Whatever happened to Tucker Carlson? Great article here in the Dispatch. Bunch of Never Trump Republicans. It dropped October 1st. When 9/11 truthers confronted Tucker Carlson on the campaign trail ahead of the 2012 Iowa caucuses, the famous former host of CNN's Crossfire, when he wore that bow tie, didn't mince words with the conspiracy theorists. It's filthy to say things like that with no evidence, and you have none, so you should stop, Carlson said. What about the family members of 9/11 victims who are asking questions? Parasites like you make it worse for them, he replied. The 9/11 truthers also confronted Carlson about his decision to abruptly leave a 2008 Ron Paul rally. Head of the 2008 Iowa caucuses, Carlson, who initially supported the Iraq War, wrote a profile of Ron Paul for the New Republic, in which he concluded that he admired the anti-war Texas Republican congressman and presidential candidate so much that he wanted to wear a Ron Paul sticker. In September 2008, Carlson was emceeing a Ron Paul rally in Minneapolis where 12,000 supporters were gathered, but he walked out of the convention after Jesse Ventura, the former Minnesota governor, began spouting 9/11 conspiracy theories. I was enraged by it, Carlson told the 9/11 truthers in Iowa. It just totally discredits libertarianism and the ideas of Ron Paul and liberty itself if you start accusing people of things on the basis of no evidence. When a truther asked him about the evidence presented by Alex Jones, the famous all-round conspiracy theorist, Tucker Carlson replied, I don't know Alex Jones. I don't have any feelings about Alex Jones. When the camera in his face stopped rolling, Carlson playfully said, Alex Jones, F you, Alex Jones, freaks me out. When he then realized a different camera was still rolling, Carlson said, I don't really know much about him at all. Last week, the Tucker Carlson live tour arrived in Reading, Pennsylvania with a special guest, Alex Jones. Fans snapped up seats via Ticketmaster for $34 to $199. VIP tickets, which typically go for $1,600, sold out. Alex Jones is my friend, Tucker Carlson told the crowd in Pennsylvania. There's nothing to be ashamed of. So I think what's going on here is audience capture. Tucker Carlson recognizes the low IQ level of much of his audience, and he plays to it. Alex Jones is now such a good friend. He was one of Tucker Carlson's first podcast guests after the launch of the Tucker Carlson Network, where annual subscriptions go for $72 back in December of 2023. I have not subscribed to the Tucker Carlson Network. I admire that Tucker had Steve Saylor on. He's had some good guests, but just so many trashy guests. Alex Jones is not a crazy person, Carlson said in the opening monologue of the December 2023 podcast with Jones, who a year before was ordered to pay $1 billion in defamation damage for claiming that the Sandy Hook Elementary School massacre was staged with crisis actors. So Tucker Carlson, the great debater and the interrogator of Crossfire and Fox News fame, asked Alex Jones no tough questions during the podcast. He glossed over Alex Jones's ridiculous conspiracy theories. It was more than $1 billion judgment for saying something other people didn't like, Carlson said of the Sandy Hook defamation judgment. They effectively blamed you for a school shooting that you were not present at. At his defamation trial, Jones admitted the massacre was 100% real. So what about the 9/11 conspiracies that Tucker Carlson found so vile back in 2012? I'll just confess that I first heard of Alex Jones when he questioned the official story behind 9/11, and I, speaking for myself, was deeply offended by this. I didn't take any time to find out what he's saying, said Carlson, who now calls Alex Jones a prophet who predicted 9/11. Alex Jones called 9/11. They tried to put him in jail for it, Tucker Carlson told the crowd gathered in Pennsylvania on September 23. Tucker's toughest question for Jones that evening, what's it like to be vindicated on everything? So what happened to Tucker? It's a question you hear a lot around Washington, D.C., where the former Fox News star is usually referred to by his first name alone, not because of his fame, like a Hillary or Oprah, but because pretty much everyone had some personal contact with him. Tucker was such a man about town in Washington, D.C., and such a media fixture that in 2021, 16 reporters told the New York Times that Tucker was a great source for Trump White House gossip and news. Pretty much everyone, including those who knew him well, remains perplexed by his transformation in the Trump era. It's been a parlor game for 10 years now. What happened to Tucker Carlson? Because everybody knew him and everybody's trying to figure it out. Well, I think Tucker has grown towards attention the way that plants grow towards the sun. What happened to Tucker is that he went from being a P.J. O'Rourke libertarian in the 1990s to an Alex Jones nationalist in the 2020s. Why did it happen? There are various theories: fame, ego, power, money, ideology, lunacy, but none is satisfying by itself. So Mark Halperin just did a show.
Let's go right to Celinda Lake, because we're so happy to have her and she can't stay forever. Celinda, welcome. Oh, wait a minute. I'll do it. Here we go. Celinda, I'm going to unmute you. Thank you.
Members, Pennsylvania, and women voters.
So you're not working for either the DNC or the Harris campaign?
No, I switched over to the independent expenditures.
Yeah. Okay. So here's my first question for you about the Fox interview. People are saying this gives her a chance to reach different voters. It seems to me that there's also going to be some symbolism here that she's showing, taking tough questions, et cetera. So if you were to explain to folks the logic of doing her first ever interview on Fox less than 3 weeks before Election Day, how would you explain it?
I think, well, first of all, I think Bret Baier is a really, really smart, fair interviewer. And I have had the privilege of being on his show, and he's not like some of the other people that I won't mention. Several of them are not there anymore. So, but I think you're right. First of all, 41% of independent voters and swing voters watch Fox. So the first thing you're doing is targeting a lot of swing voters. And the second, and a lot of blue collar swing voters. The second thing is, I think it does show that she's open, taking questions, can handle questions wherever. I think this has been a little bit of a false route from the press. And then thirdly, I think it shows strength. And it's a great opportunity to get her economic proposals out. Many of her...
Right. Do you seriously believe that Kamala Harris would be doing Fox News if she wasn't desperate.
Economic proposals, the ones centered on middle class, the populist ones, are very, very positive with Fox audiences. So I think it's a really good opportunity for her, and I'm really pleased that she's doing it.
Okay. I want to ask you about some criticisms that have been made not just by Republicans and some journalists, but by some Democrats of things going on with the Harris campaign, and have you explain them as you see them, whether you agree that there's something negative going on there or push back and say, no, it's perfectly fine, and here's explains it. Her schedule seems pretty light for someone who's trying to introduce herself to the country. So, for instance, today, she left Washington about an hour and a half ago. She didn't do any public events all day. I'm sure she's doing stuff behind the scenes, but statistically, she does like less than one event per day, I think, on average, since she became the de facto nominee. Even now, she's, like today, she's doing one event. So people are saying, if she's really fighting for the nomination, why isn't she going to 4 media markets in battleground states per day? What would you say about that?
I'm not really an expert. I actually personally had the opposite impression. I think that she's out there a lot. You got to remember, she's trying to jam 2 years into 2 months. So I guess my perspective on it is she's doing a lot because she's doing different kinds of meetings, the field meetings, the staff meetings, the prep meetings, the message meetings. And then I think it's smart that you have one major event where you concentrate your message so that it isn't diffuse and all over the place. But that's not my expertise. I kind of had the impression that she was out a lot.
Well, isn't it part of a pollster's job, though, to say, like, go to this media market in this state? Because, and with the following message, isn't that something pollsters do?
Well, what pollsters would do is not necessarily say you physically go. They would say, we need more jobs-oriented messaging in Pittsburgh. Or we're having GOTV problems in African-American neighborhoods in Milwaukee. We need this. Whether that's delivered by the candidate in paid media, surrogates, and she's way more aggressive about using surrogates than the Biden campaign was. Right. We wouldn't necessarily say how to implement it. We'd say, yeah, these are voters you need to reach for this purpose.
So once upon a time when I was a little boy, pre-digital, the candidate had to go. Is the digital age mean the candidate doesn't need to go? And so if she never did 3 rallies in a day between now and election day, you would think nothing of it?
I would think nothing of it, and I would think it's good because that same rally is getting repeated. And what we need is representation. Right. It is really hard to break through right now, and I think they're juggling presence with concentration and focus.
So would you say that those who criticize President Trump are doing a rally in California, that's also a baseless criticism? Because as long as he's doing a rally and it's being covered?
Well, and it's national television, and absolutely. Yeah. I mean, this is not the parochial Nixon campaign where you go to Alaska just before the election because you promised to be in all 50 states. It's a totally different era. And I think he went to California because he does need to raise money, and he went to California because the place he chose was a good audience for a message that he wanted to get across.
Right. Okay. I see some great hands up from folks who've been involved before, so we're going to hear questions for Celinda pretty soon. But I want to ask a few more. So another criticism is that the campaign is spending a lot of time, including her time, trying to woo black male voters. And Barack Obama, when he did it, gave a message that some have characterized, including some black Democrats, as hectoring. So how would you explain this intense focus with 3 weeks to go on a core Democratic constituency?
Well, African-American men have been, first of all, African-American men will be the second highest voters for her, no matter where they're at, and only by African-American women. So they will be her second best voting group. But when you're even, or when you're 1 point up, when you need turnout, then every vote matters. And so it's different whether you're at 76 or 96% with a particular group. So she's right to be emphasizing, and Trump is emphasizing black men. In some ways, you would say to him, well, what are you doing emphasizing a constituency you'll probably get 16% of? Well, he's doing it because it comes straight out of her base. So I think she's being very smart to notice where there are changes and where there's some softness and going in there to strengthen it up, because every vote matters.
Okay, back to the subject topic. What the heck happened to Tucker Carlson? All right, Tucker Swanson McNear Carlson, right? Not a typical name of a populist. Grew up in La Jolla, California, rich suburb of San Diego. Followed in the footsteps of his father, Dick Carlson, to a career in journalism. Tucker is strongly motivated. He's interested in everything. He knows everything. He read War and Peace when he was 8 years old. Dick Carlson, his father, said in a 2006 C-SPAN interview. Tucker's father started his career in journalism in California. He later served as the director for the Voice of America during the Reagan administration. And Tucker admired his father, got his big break in Washington journalism when he was hired as a 26-year-old staff writer at the Weekly Standard. After bombing his job interview, unable to impress the editors with good story ideas, Tucker wasn't going to get the job, but executive editor Fred Barnes' wife, Barbara, urged him to reconsider. Tucker's wife, Susie, was a teacher at the school attended by the Barnes' younger children. Fred Barnes persuaded his colleagues to give Tucker a second chance, told Tucker to bring some story ideas this time. At his callback interview, Tucker had great ideas, got the job. Before the first issue went to press, the editors realized they had hired an exceptional talent. Andrew Ferguson, senior editor at the Weekly Standard for almost its entire 23-year history, calls it in the summer before the magazine's September 1995 launch. Staffers were busy in the office building up a backlog of stories when deputy editor John Podhoretz walked into his office carrying a hard copy of one of Carlson's articles. Podhoretz slapped the print copy against his knee, saying, "The guy was born knowing how to write a magazine article. It was just a fully formed, perfect piece." And the chat says, "Why do people who could genuinely move things in a better direction lowest common denominator?" Good point. I remember when Tucker stabbed Ron Paul in the back on the eve of the New Hampshire primaries with a live hit job on Ron Paul and his connection to racist newsletters. Horatio said, "I didn't get either the COVID booster or the flu shot, and I feel fine." Good to hear. Tucker kept on producing pieces that were the perfect balance of seriousness and levity, and he was not afraid to report. He did great coverage of Senator John McCain. He had a light touch. He was recognized by other outlets. He was freelancing for Esquire, Forbes, and Talk. He left the Standard after the 2000 election for a TV contract at CNN. He needed the money for his growing family. His TV stardom initially peaked as co-host of Crossfire, but the program was canceled in January 2005 after The Daily Show's Jon Stewart berated its hosts on air for hurting America with shallow and partisan debates. Tucker then hosted a show at MSNBC simply titled Tucker from 2005 until its cancellation in 2008. In 2009, Tucker was booed at the Conservative Political Action Conference after saying that conservatives needed their own outlets that mirrored the New York Times, dedicated to news gathering and to accuracy. And in 2010, he founded the Daily Caller with the intent to be just that kind of news organization. The rise of Donald Trump provided an opening for Tucker Carlson's return to TV stardom at Fox News. I remember this thoughtful, important essay that Tucker wrote for Politico in early 2016. Donald Trump is shocking, vulgar, and right. So Tucker saw a lot to like in Donald Trump as an anti-establishment wrecking ball. And with few Fox News contributors willing to defend Trump early in the primary, Tucker Carlson began getting more airtime in the evening. Just before Election Day in 2016, he was named the host of the 7 p.m. show. He had the highest ratings in cable news, but his tenure as a primetime star was marked by an increasingly bizarre behavior that became even worse after he was fired by Fox in April 2023. So the pundit who started out anti-Trump, spending more time attacking Trump's enemies than defended him, after he left Fox, ended up shilling for Vladimir Putin, promoting conspiracy theories and elevating anti-Semites. Latest round of What Happened to Tucker kicked off September 2nd when Tucker hosted a little-known amateur historian named Daryl Cooper. Carlson began the show by praising Cooper's relentless curiosity and honesty before adding, "I want you to be widely recognized as the most important historian in the United States." Cooper told his audience that Winston Churchill was the chief villain of the Second World War for letting the war expand beyond the invasion of Poland in 1939. Tucker did not ask Cooper any tough questions, didn't press Cooper when he suggested that the Holocaust happened by accident. And Daryl Cooper's true nature was quite obvious before he went on the Tucker Carlson show. Right? He posted a lot of positive tweets of Nazis and Nazi-themed regalia. He tweeted a photo of Hitler in front of the Eiffel Tower and said the picture was infinitely preferable in virtually every way to a photo of the Paris Olympics opening ceremony where drag queens appeared to mock the Last Supper. After the podcast aired, Cooper, who declined the opportunity to debate an actual World War II historian, tweeted that Hitler initially sought an acceptable solution to the Jewish problem. Cooper's Substack subscription soared. His own podcast topped the charts on Apple. What the heck happened? Right? Some who knew Carlson struggled to explain his elevation of Daryl Cooper. Beneath that cheerful and outgoing and friendly exterior, Tucker is a cauldron of anger and resentment, says a former Fox News colleague. It's almost like he's trying to aggravate everybody. I aggregate everyone. Tucker's trying to aggravate everyone. Former colleague thinks Carlson is probably as talented as anybody in our business. Venture to guess that doing stuff like elevating this crazy historian and saying other quasi-outrageous things helps Tucker Carlson have an impact. Right? So this Daryl Cooper interview accomplished something that Carlson has done only one other time since being fired from Fox News last year. Tucker has the entire political media ecosystem paying attention to him. The last time that Tucker set the world aflame was in February when he flew to Russia to conduct a softball interview with Vladimir Putin. So Tucker does not need to boost a Nazi revisionist historian or to shore for Putin for the money. Right? He was making $20 million a year at Fox News, but now maybe he's just out for the money and the attention. So he wrote in the introduction to his 2021 book, The Long Slide, every best-selling political author is reviled by large numbers of people. One side hates you, the other side buys your books. There isn't a marketing director in the country who doesn't know that. So perhaps what's good marketing advice for booksellers is also good marketing advice for podcasters. Okay, I have a question. I'm intrigued by this website. It's called Psych Hacks. And I think this guy's consistently
highly
right.
encourage you to check out my series on the balance.
Okay.
In brief, it is not possible for two people to like each other exactly the same amount. Therefore, in any relationship, one person must always like the other person more, and one person must always like the other person less. The person who likes the other person more is the adorer, and the person who likes the other less is the adored. Now, these two roles are gender neutral. Both men and women can be adorers, and both men and women can be the adored. And both roles come with their pros and cons. It's not actually better to be the adored and vice versa. However, in my opinion, it's generally better for women to be adorers, and I'm going to back up that statement in this episode. Now, it may sound strange.
This completely matches my life experience. I've never had a relationship work when I was the adorer. And my relationships have only worked to the extent that I am adored by the woman I'm with.
But most people, men and women, most people actually want to be adorers. Most people don't think they do, but they actually do. And this is because most people are looking for that feeling. They want to find their person, to feel excited about a relationship, to be in love, to feel lucky to be there. Most people want to feel these things in a relationship, but these emotions are not shared in the same degree between the two roles. These emotions are mostly felt by the adorer. Why? Because the adorer, and only the adorer, gets to be with the one they love. The adored, on the other hand, gets to be loved by the one they're with. It's not nearly as emotionally compelling of an experience. So if you want the emotional dimension of love in a relationship, you're really looking to be the adorer. Now, before I go any further, if you're liking what you're hearing, please consider sending this video to
someone. All right, let's move past the shilling.
Almost as much as women do. But here's the thing. In my experience, it's more important for a woman to have an emotional experience in a relationship than it is for a man. That's kind of like why the woman is there. Perhaps you've heard it said that you can make a woman feel anything except bored. And there's some truth to that statement. A woman who hates you might not leave, but a woman who feels indifferently is probably looking for the door. So if it's more important for a woman to have an emotional experience in a relationship, then it's probably better that she be the adorer. Because if she's the adored, if she's up there on that, good for a while, but it will actually get boring pretty quickly. Being on a pedestal ain't all it's cracked up to be. And a bored woman makes for an unsustainable relationship. Men, this is what you have to understand. Two people in a relationship cannot occupy the same place. And so when a man insists on being the adorer, he kind of robs the woman of the opportunity of being the adorer, which isn't really doing any one of them any favors. And this is because you can't have two adorers, and you can't have two adorers because of the balance of attraction, which maintains that two people cannot like each other exactly the same amount. Insisting on being the adorer forces the woman to be the adored, which robs her of the lion's share of emotionality in the relationship. Make sense? Now, there's another important reason why it's better for women to be adorers, and this reason has to do with hypergamy, which we have now talked about a few times on this channel.
Okay, I think he's exactly right. Let's get Kip back on the show. Kip, what's going on, man?
I just called to say, what's up, Luke?
What up,
bro?
bro?
Hey, I just figured I'd rap at you a little bit if your schedule wasn't too tight.
Yep, I'm wide open, bro.
Fantastic. I was just one thing we hadn't told me, he was in the back of a 2.5 ton pickup truck or troop carrier when he was in the Army, and he was down there near Homestead, Florida, during that whole Cuban Missile Crisis stuff.
Wow.
And when they announced that Kennedy had been shot, everybody in the back of that troop carrier broke out cheering. So isn't that weird how that isn't the way it transmitted in the history books, but that's the way it actually went down in the 60s when my dad was in the Army down there in South Florida.
And Tom Wolfe relayed a similar story. He went out onto the streets of Manhattan to get reactions to the shooting of JFK, and he noticed that every ethnic group was blaming their bitterest rivals for the assassination. So some were blaming Jews, and some were blaming blacks, and others were blaming the Italian mafia. But his story never got to see the light of day. It never was published because it went against the prevailing narrative that America was in grief.
Right. One of my many proofs that we might be here for more of a universal. One of my many proofs that we might be here for more of a universal purpose is I was a very aware kid. There was probably a few things in my life that made me that way, but I can tell you were very aware, maybe as an 8 or 9 year old. Am I right? You were
in some ways, and other ways I was pretty not attuned.
Well, I would imagine you being grown up that around the church, you didn't really know much about the darker elements of life, but you knew all the G-rated stuff pretty doggone well. But one thing that used to irk me, and I'm talking about when I was 8 or 9, is I hated, and this is why I think we might be here for a purpose, is I hated the way my little 8-year-old, 9-year-old life would swing from this like level +10 down to 0 and would keep going down all the way to -10. And I would be like, man, this sucks. And then it would like, as soon as you got a good feeling of how bad it sucked, it would zoom back up, to something north of that. And then, I don't know, I would always get this impression as soon as I would be, level 8, level 9, level 10, I'd be looking around going, oh shit, the bottom's getting ready to drop out from under me. Did you get those feelings? Were you that aware as a kid? Looking back now?
Somewhat. I've had these dramatic swings of emotion, which got blunter when I finally got on my ADHD medication.
Right. But just like I told you in our last discussion, rich people want to live in a world where the crystal doesn't get broken. They can't. As a kid, I was trying to tune my life to get to I didn't have to live at +10 because I knew what happened once you get to level +10. I wanted to try to live at level 5, where every day was like ice cream. You know what I mean? It wasn't hard drugs, but every day was ice cream. But I couldn't even get that, It was like you must learn this, my son. Take that, take that, take that. And it never would stop, no matter how much I tried, like we talked about bubble wrapping your existence. Even as a kid, man, I think I'm talking from experience because as a kid, I tried to bubble wrap my existence. Impossible is what it is.
Well, you obviously don't want to be bopping around from +10 to -10. I think people, and academic studies show this, people are born with a certain baseline level of happiness that they don't tend to deviate from. So some people are able to go through life at a 7 out of 10 most of the time. Other people, their baseline is a 4 out of 10. So I'm not afraid of feeling giddy. So I'm not afraid of those 10 out of 10 feelings. They hit me. So right. I know some people want to keep everything controlled. So when I feel 10 out of 10, I just let it wash over me. I enjoy it, but I no longer have the dread that means inevitably I'll go back to -10 out of 10. I just expect to go back to a more reasonable baseline, something like 5 out of 10.
Right. No, I understand. I was going to give you a chance to think of a couple of your favorite interviewers, but I was going to tell you the names are going to be quirky, but I was going to give you maybe the 3 interviewers I liked the best. because, you know, we all like certain qualities. But what I like generally in an interviewer is the questions that they ask. And also, it's like I don't have to tap them on the arm to say something. It's like they're reading my mind. You know, you get a good interviewer, he is listening just like he was an audience member, and he'll say, wait a minute, you're getting too far ahead, you know, back up a little bit and explain X, Y, or Z. But this guy named Jeffrey Mishlove was my favorite interviewer, still is my favorite interviewer. And he had this show called, it used to be called Thinking Aloud, and then it was called New Thinking Aloud. And he was right out there in like Silicon Valley. So I mean, he got the full spectrum of some of the wisest people you would ever come across. And then on the very next episode, it could be the craziest son of a bitch you might ever run across in your life. You get what I'm saying? And it would oscillate from genius to crazy, who he might be on. But he treated them all with such respect. And it was like he was wringing out a rag, getting the most out of the 30 minutes or however much time he had with them. And the second guy is that first guy's about 70 now, that Jeffrey Mishlove. Second guy is a guy named Henrik Palmgren. I think he's over in Sweden somewhere, and he's probably younger than me. And something about his tone and the way he talks.
On Red Eyes, the
quality to it, hypnotic quality. So it's almost like he's cheating. You get what I'm saying? Some people just have qualities that a normal person can't bring to the game. But that Henrik Palmgren, again, I would say 63% of his audience members were batshit crazy, but he still treated them the same as the 37% of sane people, you know, that had some level of genius to them, whatever it was. He could find it, talk about it, get the most out of them. And then I would say the third guy, and you definitely aren't going to know this guy, but his name's Jason Burak, and he has a little YouTube channel called Wall Street for Main Street. And it's very underappreciated, but he gets people on the show that they may only know like bonds, but they know bonds inside and out. You know what I mean? You're getting the very cream of the crop of somebody that just knows one thing. Because as you can tell in the society we live in, nobody can really be a generalist anymore. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I didn't prepare for your question, but I'm just thinking back. I think Larry King did a pretty good job on his interviews. There was a talk show host at KGO in San Francisco, Ron Owens. I liked his interviews, and a talk show host named Michael Jackson, who was big on KABC radio until the 90s. I thought he was an excellent interviewer. So generally speaking, I think the shorter the question, the better. And Larry King was good at asking short questions.
Yeah. Where was it where he kind of did a bad interview and was like asking somebody about their dead relative or something? I don't know. He kind of like had a bad interview one time, but I generally agree with you about Larry King. Every once in a while, he would seem out of touch, like with the was it Seinfeld? He seemed a little bit out of touch when he interviewed Seinfeld. But my God, what can we expect from the guy? He was as old as Methuselah by then. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I'm not even. That's just my vague impression that I enjoyed listening to Larry King. And I think there's a former interviewer, Roy Firestone. Is he the guy who was able to get so many interview subjects to cry? And Oprah, she gets so many people to cry. So I would expect that both Roy Firestone, Oprah, and any interview host who's able to allow their subjects to cry. Barbara Walters, I think, was a pretty good interviewer as well.
Yeah, I don't know if it was Roy Firestone, but I know, my God, Roy Firestone hadn't been on in 35 years, and I'm still wondering, was he white? Was he black?
White.
What was Roy? Was he white? He just happened to have sort of a fro where you could tell somebody in the family was black not too far back, because I don't know, but yeah, you're right. I thought Roy Firestone did a good interview as well. Well, I was going to try a Gedanken, I guess you'd say, thought experiment with you. But I was going to ask you a question, and then we could look up the answer together. But one thing I don't know, I'm not so technically savvy to know if I give you a Google search word, if you can look it up on your end and get the absolute same search result.
I don't know.
Anyway, the thought experiment was going to be, when you think about a little kid, just beyond the age of, I've been thinking about this since my kids were doing like their first pictures, because something profound kind of struck me. But when a kid is not finger painting anymore, they're doing that first family portrait, you know, and they show mom and dad or whatever. You would expect, of course, there's going to be a mom and a dad. Unfortunately, today, there's probably not going to be a dad 100% of the time, but we're going to have parents, and then we're going to have the children themselves. But what else would Luke Ford expect to see? Let's just say, you know, 30% of the time, 40% of the time, you know, you're going to see a house sometimes when a kid does their first family portrait, right?
Yeah, I haven't thought about it. I would expect something to do with his parents and family.
Mm-hmm. But it may be, you know. But so when I think in generality of what we expect to see, maybe a house a third of the time, maybe 40% of the time, maybe a dog or a cat, right? Maybe a tree. Maybe there's a favorite tree that they've got like a tree house or something in or whatever that they'll include in the picture. But generally speaking, that's about it, right? That would be about it, would you say?
Sure, I've never thought about it much.
I understand. The sun is in the picture about 65% of the time. And I'm taking a snapshot. What I have done here before I got on the phone with you is I just put in Google children, drawing, family, and then I flipped over to images, and it was about, when I stopped counting, it was like 17 out of 22, 17 of the first 22 included a sun, sometimes animated, sometimes not. So what's that all about?
I don't get it. The sun, you mean the sun that shines on us, or the sun? I don't get it.
Yes, sir. The sun that shines on us?
I have no idea.
Right. Well, the thing working around in my head, and that has been ever since about 2007, is children, you know, although they come in before we tell them things are this way, things are not this way, do this, don't do this, think this way, don't think that way, they have a strong association with the sun, enough that it's in, you know, probably two thirds of the first portraits that a child will draw. So that's just something to think about, isn't it? I mean, you're not having kids. I understand this is something you hadn't even thought about, right? But
correct.
Even now that you've thought about it, you're like, you would think maybe a house or a pet would be more prevalent, you know, but it wasn't. But anyway, later in time, you can come back and maybe do a Google search for children, drawing, family, flip over to images, and then that way you can get a good snapshot. It's almost as if you're in a first grader's classroom, you know, where instead of them being on the wall, you're just scrolling up and seeing them, and you can see that for yourself and kind of like, you know,
okay, got it.
The kind of mystical things that Kip thinks about. You know, one time somebody told me a good analogy about a steak, and I was gonna, or they told me an analogy, and they used eating a steak, but the analogy was about desire. Can I try to quickly give that to you, if you don't mind? Okay, because what they were trying to show is how, you know, I've told you before that I believe that most people are drugged around by desires to the point where they don't have a lot of free will. And to give you an idea of what somebody will do is maybe they've worked real hard on a Friday and they're like, man, I sure would like a steak for dinner. And they stop off at the grocery store and they get a $15 cut of meat. and then they get something to baste it in, and they get a salad, and they get the baked potato that they want, and then they go home and they do all the prep work, and basically they put in about 2 hours to put together this gorgeous steak and potato and salad just the way they want it. And then we're going to express the desire for that steak as a gallon of milk, just a mental gallon of milk. And right now, it is at 100%. Their desire has been strong, and right now their mouth is watering for that steak. But a strange thing happens. They take maybe 3 or 4 bites of that steak, and that gallon of milk that was at one time 100% desire, it's now been knocked down to about 60, 70%. And they take 5 or 6 more bites of that steak, and now after about 10 bites, the desire is down to about 25%. Munching on that baked potato and that salad, and they're starting to get full. And then I'm telling you, within 5 minutes of them starting on that steak, that gallon of milk, that desire is down to 0. And they're looking at a dead cow. They're looking at it, they're going, man, this thing looks like a dead cow. I'm done with it. They hand the leftovers to the dog and they move on with life. But it's just strange how the desire really, I might have told that a little wrong, because actually after about like 5 or 6 bites, that desire, I think most of it is gone. But just trying to show the hollow nature, of that. And the worst part about it is, after you scrape off the plate and throw it in the dishwasher and all that, 45 minutes later, you're going to be craving a bowl of ice cream or something, whatever it is. That's just the way
I think
most
I think you're in part describing someone who's high and got the munchies, but also I steak means nothing to me. But if you were to change that analogy to pornography, so there are plenty of times in my life where pornography was the most enticing, exciting thing that I could look at, and then I'd nut, and I had absolutely no desire to look at any pornography for a few hours at least. So
right. If you were a rich man, you would have spanked your hands together and said, "Get this away from me! I want this filth away now." The same way someone would do with the steak. So
I'd
it's so
rather
hard.
wash my hands first before I spank them.
Right, but it's so the desire was so big, and then kaput, it's gone. And then the way the mind works, it's a blonde 2 hours later, maybe in your situation or whatever. But it's just led around by the nose. There's a guy, because I used to not share this idea. I thought that the idea that people didn't have free will was crazy. And I heard a crazy-haired guy named Robert Sapolsky give a pretty good argument that got me thinking, because I had not put 2 and 2 together, that people are led around by the nose by their unconscious desires, and they can't get the best of them. And because I have licked that, you're always asking me, what's so great about your way of living? And I'm almost.
Oh, you've licked this. You don't suffer from these normal human foibles. You don't eat too much, for example.
No, because I just think about, if I eat too much for dinner, I just think about what it's going to feel like when my stomach's trying to digest it at 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, whatever it is.
So what's your weight? What's your weight, Kip?
Just under 200.
And what's your height?
5'10" and a half, not quite 5'11".
Okay, so you're about 20 pounds overweight. So why are you 20 pounds overweight if you've got this discipline?
Yes, I actually have ultimate discipline, but I tell you what, I was supposed to renew my gym membership about 45 days ago. And there's always a fight with my dogs, Luke, where I have to try to pretend like a cat burglar to get out of the house. You know what I mean? Because you're like, hey, you should just tell them Daddy will be back or whatever. But they get all bent out of shape. They like to go
so
with
it's
me.
your dog's fault that you eat too much, because you're obviously eating too much because you're overweight.
No, I don't eat too much.
Then why are you 20 pounds overweight?
I probably just eat. I've told you this before. I'm probably the laziest person in the world. Probably the laziest person. But these are one of the things. This is one of the things where I don't know if it's Cal, Chemadog, whoever, but there's hangups about the fact that I protesteth the spiritual life. And I don't know. I think you, y'all, them, they think I would be better if I was working. I would just be better to be working.
Yes.
Even though money,
yes.
Even though money isn't the deal anymore, you think I should.
I think you should get a job and be of service to other people.
Yeah, but I'm already of service to other people. I spend my Saturdays with my mom. I can't really talk to you in the mornings from Saturday from like 9 to 3 because I spend that time with her doing her weekly stuff. And I spend time with my dad and my pets. And I talk to my kids on the phone. And I got my own sanity to worry about. So why would we needlessly why should I go down to Walmart? Why should I join the mortgage industry or the banking industry again? Why would I do that?
To be of service to other people and to receive more feedback. So you lead an isolated life. So you may be the disciplined, admirable mystic that you paint yourself as. On the other hand, you could be deluded, and you wouldn't know that you were deluded until you're having close daily interactions with other people. But you get to live in a possible world of delusion. It may be a world of enlightenment. I don't know. But it's possible that in your drugged state and your isolated state that you are deluded about the nature of your life.
Yeah, it's just possible that you don't understand it. I mean,
that's true.
Do you know a thing about perennial philosophy? I mean, an absolute thing. Do you know? Have you ever even heard the word?
I have heard the word, and I don't think I have thought much about it.
Okay.
It's Aldous Huxley.
Yeah, he wasn't the first, but you're right. He did do a book on that. So what do I gain by claiming that Luke is it? What do I claim? What do I gain by claiming Luke is it? I don't have a book to sell you. You're just my friend. So what did I claim? Or what do I gain by claiming you are it? Is it just something neat and cool and novel? If I wanted something neat and cool and novel to share with you, I would just tell you, hey, Anton Chaikin has a great little thing called the Scottish Rite and the KKK. He did a hell of a lot of analysis on it. If you like conspiracy theories or whatever, check it out. I mean, I could go that angle with you if we want to talk some conspiracy, but what do I gain? I mean, what do I gain by telling you you're it? What do I gain by telling you Tat Vanasi, thou art that? What do I gain by that, Luke?
Nothing that I'm aware of.
Okay.
So you know that I respect you.
I'm not trying to fleece you.
Yep,
I'm not trying
to
dazzle you with brilliance or baffle you with bullshit, right? Yep. I'm not trying. Okay, so we understand that. I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, I have tremendous respect that you can take criticism and challenge, and it doesn't get to you personally, because 99% of people would have gotten pissed off by now at the way I would challenge the things that they say. And it speaks very highly of you that you have overcome this hypersensitivity to criticism that does not benefit the overwhelming majority of people.
Right. In your world, if the culture was Luke Ford type people, shamans wouldn't be allowed. You get what I'm saying? I understand areas of your thinking where you have hangups, and in anything that gives somebody any kind of a vision, anything that brings them closer to the God, you ain't about that. So you get what I'm saying? If we lived in the Luke Fordosphere for real, there wouldn't be no shamans. It would be,
No, I recognize that for some people, shamans are adaptive. For some people, believing in mysticism is adaptive. So some people get destroyed by the accoutrement of a normal life, such as holding down a full-time job and living a life closely immersed with family and extended family and friends. That doesn't work for everyone, right? Some people are better off pursuing a path that you're on. I recognize the varieties of the human experience.
Yeah, if to try to flip this back on you, you live close to Beverly Hills, right? I don't know where Cal lives. I don't know where Brandon lives. I don't know where Kimadov lives. But if they, remember I talked to you about I used a metaphor of a money tree. And let's say that money tree had a rolling 90-day average of around $70,000 a month. Would they have the discipline to cut that thing down the moment they said, I don't need no more. I don't need no more. And along the way, with Kimadov, Cal, Brandon, Luke, would they have the discipline to be holding in their hands $70,000 a month, $140 in 2 months, $350 in 5 months, $700 in 10 months, $1,050,000 in 15 months, and be spending $1,000 a month, $1,000 a month, $1,000 a month, because they've already told themselves, we're cutting this tree down. We're not about this. This is a have to do. We ain't about this though. Would they have that kind of discipline?
I don't know, but I doubt it. I believe that you have some extraordinary abilities that 99% of people do not have, along with some extraordinary weaknesses that most people don't have. We're all a combination of strengths and weaknesses.
Give me the weaknesses, because my biggest, I love the one that I don't see, because the laziness is the one I do see. Lack of mechanical ability is the one I do see. The lack of verbal skills to go along with the mathematical skills that I have. That's what I do see. But tell me what you see. Tell me the one that's right out in front of
so
my
you
nose.
had an anecdote about how you hit a deer on a motorcycle a couple of weeks ago, remember?
Yeah, yes.
So my greatest concern about you is that your hold on life is weaker than I would wish. That accident, from the way you described it, could have been the end of Kip.
Yes. You've never heard of people like getting a new lease on life because technically they could have bought the farm there?
Absolutely, but I think that episode was a symptom of an overall life strategy that you have that renders you way too vulnerable. I could be wrong, but that's my fear.
You're probably wrong, because there's not a lot of things I don't like to go skydiving. There's not a lot of things like that I like to do. In fact, maybe even drug wise, maybe I was experimental at one time, LSD, DMT. I've tried a lot of stuff, but as far as me and my shamanic ways, I only like the one thing, so I share your worries about people with weed being a gateway drug or whatever. In fact, I worry about you, because one day somebody's going to pull out some coke or something that speeds you up at a party. And if they catch you and your guard's down and you go all about it, you won't come back, because from that side of things, you and I are the exact opposite. You like to go up and I like to come down. So that's just weird the way we're exactly opposite in that kind of regard. Let me check my note here and see if there was anything that else I wanted to mention to you. I wanted to ask you something about ultimate reality, whatever.
But just a second first, I had a follow-up question for you. If you had a stroke when you got off from this conversation, how long would it be till somebody found your body?
My mom would probably have the neighbor here by sundown tomorrow. She's relentless. So I mean, to answer your question, and I don't know. I worry about such things too, but I worry about it because my dad tries to plant the seed and say that in some ways, smoking cigarettes is a lifestyle that leads towards a widowmaker heart attack for someone like me who just tries to like use exercise and things like that and doesn't worry about monthly checkups and stuff such like that. You get what I'm saying?
Wait. When you say you use exercise, you don't really exercise very much from the sound of it. What do you mean using exercise? What exercise do you do and how much do you do?
I walk an hour a day.
Okay.
So, I mean, but like I should be running an hour a day. You get what I'm saying?
Yes.
That's what I should be doing, but I end up walking the first 5 minutes, and once I call it my engine. Once I get my engine going, I just walk on out. But that's a good little cheat, by the way. That's a good cheat because you get a lot more. You're cheating your body into thinking it's needing the efficiency of a running machine, and then all of a sudden you down gear into walking, and I don't think your body really catches on for another 7 minutes or whatever. So it's actually a good life hack where you can like intersperse a couple of even 3 to 5 minute runs into your walk, and it's a little bit of a life hack. But anyway, swimming, that's my thing. I like swimming. I like to swim for about 45 minutes. I lose myself in the swim, daydream or whatever. I can't do the same thing when I'm running. I'm stuck in the moment. When I'm walking with the dogs, I'm stuck in the moment. So if I had the heart to shake off the dogs and go renew that $355 membership at the gym, that's the thing is swimming. I just like to swim for a mile, and it's a nice way to pass the time. Any other questions you had for me?
Yeah. If the United States did not give Israel any funds, but Israel had to stand on its own 2 feet, would that affect how you felt about Israel?
If it had to stand, I would say good for Israel. Good for Israel. But at the same time, I told you how I feel yesterday. I don't think they can get along with the neighborhood. And I don't think they're going to level up their thinking. And
what does level up their thinking mean? I assume that's a Southern phrase.
Well, it just means, you got people that are supposedly 2 standard deviations smarter than all the people around them. If that's the case, it should be like dealing with the help. You get what I'm saying? It should be something where they could be convinced to love their servitude or whatever Israel has planned with them. The thing I feel like I'm playing with a deficit with you when we talk about Israel is maybe there's some agenda that you should clue me in on. Maybe Israel's the 51st state because it's keeping an eye on the oil supply out there in the Middle East. If there's something that I'm missing other than Israel is just supposed to be a normal state out there, let me know. I mean, clue me in on something.
Okay, I'll clue you in. I don't think the United States should be deeply involved in the Middle East. I don't see any reason why there should be American forces in the Middle East. I don't believe the United States should subsidize Israel. I believe that American attitudes towards Israel should be entirely based on American self-interest. And I don't believe that Israel is a 51st state of the United States. So there was another point that I wanted to make, but that's what jumped out at me. I would want Israel to stand on its own 2 feet. I don't believe in the U.S. subsidizing Israel. I don't believe the U.S. has an advantage at getting so deeply in the Middle East. I think the United States, I see a very, very good arguments for the U.S. just entirely pulling its forces out of not just the Middle East, but also Europe. I don't see that NATO is of advantage to the United States. On the other hand, I am quite open. I'm much more open to the United States protecting Taiwan and moving its focus to the threat of China. But as for the Middle East, I think the U.S. should probably just completely withdraw from the Middle East. let the Middle East sort itself out, because no matter what happens in the Israel, Gaza, Hamas, Hezbollah, Iran war, it has absolutely nothing to do with the well-being of American citizens. The American government should be devoted to the well-being of American citizens. It should not be devoted to the well-being of Israeli citizens or Jordanian citizens. And so I'm America first.
Yes, yes. Amen. Amen, Brother Luke, on that. I would tell you, now I know you're a transplant, but are you familiar with the Monroe Doctrine?
Yes. We will not allow any other power to have any foreign bases in the Americas.
Okay, so how do we square Taiwan and China? If we're willing to say they're legitimate, then how do we square Taiwan and China without sounding like a hypocrite?
We would be a hypocrite, right? Taiwan is, we should expect China to exercise its own Monroe Doctrine, which would mean supremacy over the island of Taiwan, but it doesn't mean that we need to give in to them if we can stop it. Yeah, we're going to be philosophically inconsistent, but here's another foundation to the way I view the world. Your interests are more important than your principles. America's interests are more important than philosophical principles about human rights and moral and logical consistency.
I could tell that you think that way, definitely when it comes to Israel. That's why it is a blessing to hear that you're not so married to the state of Israel as I thought you were. And then, of course, carrying along this line of discussion with Ukraine being in the Russian sphere of influence.
Yes.
And do you believe with me that a lot of that is about the natural resources under the ground there? I
think it's just the Monroe Doctrine. I think what's good for the goose is good for the gander, in the sense that I would expect Russia to demand the same kind of power over Ukraine as the United States exercises over every other country in the Americas and their foreign policy.
Now, here's the problem. If we tried to be like, we're trying to be like, play it straight around the world and try to be as fair as we can with everybody. I don't know how our dollar survives. It has done so well now, but part of that was everybody having to use dollars. And when they don't have to, that could be a problem, because remember, we basically print up $7 for every $5 that we take in. It's just that it's just that so much of that happens is going overseas, for the lack of dollars, that we don't feel the inflation, except for maybe we felt it 21, 22, 23. And this is just me and you talking, but Trump caused a lot of that. I don't know if it was trying to get votes or maybe the hype on COVID, because you were in on that hype too.
I still am.
Somebody talked him into spending like $6.5 trillion over budget that year. And you and I know that inflation doesn't happen like in the moment, but by God, it was happening all through Biden's presidency. And that's what I told my dad, is that Trump was sort of a Democrat in disguise. He was just like an unwoke Democrat. But I worried then. I told my dad that the Democrats are going to say $6.5 trillion. He thinks he can overspend on a budget. We'll show him what overspending on a budget is. And to their credit, I don't think they ever hit $6.5 trillion over budget like he did in 2020. But Luke, they've been doing 2 or 2.5 every year. You get what I'm saying? They've been killing us slowly, whereas Trump pulled out the knife and killed us, all at once. He took the blood all at once. And they've been trickling it out slowly, kind of bloodletting us a little bit. So that's what I worry, because I already tell you, I think Americans we're just so soft now. I worry about us having the willpower to fight a hot war. So you say, well, we still have economic dominance. And that is true. But there's a fine line there, Luke, of playing it warm and fuzzy and being fair with everybody without being so fair that we lose, and we're all like living the level of subsistence of a Walmart worker. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
What
So
I think.
if you want the facts, apparently Joe Biden is on course to run up the federal debt $7.2 trillion. The debt rose $6.5 trillion during Trump's entire term. I'm not sure if that's inflation adjusted, but that's where we're at. It wasn't that Trump ran up the deficit $6.5 trillion in 1 year. It was during a 4-year term.
Well, I think he did probably about 6 trillion of that at the end, where he had been more level-headed for the first 3 years. You remember, if you can remember back to 2020, he was given the HBA, the historical black colleges money. He was signing up. You remember it was in the air in 2020.
Yeah, and he actually didn't do it enough. If he just compromised with the Democrats and signed one more stimulus in the summer of 2020, he would have gotten reelected. But he in a fit of pique, he refused to sign on for more stimulus, particularly for the battleground Rust Belt states, and that cost him the election. So right now, the way that American politics works, that there are no votes in reducing the deficit. Just like telling the truth won't get you laid. Right? Go to a bar, start dating a woman. Telling the truth is not going to get you laid. And if you're running for president of the United States, using a platform of reducing the federal deficit is not going to get you elected.
Right. Now, from here on out, if you say, I'm going to cut programs, it'll be used against you. You get what I'm saying? If you say, I'm going to raise taxes, it'll be used against you. We have reached the point in American society where all they're going to do is keep printing dollars and creating it through inflation. And that's why the Fed has what they call the dual mandate of 2% inflation and full employment. And you say, what's that all about, Kip? Why do they care about those two things? Because they feel like if they don't have full employment and over 2% inflation, that's where people start, going into the streets, and society starts getting a little bit restless. So you've hit the nail on the head. That's the only way from here on out.
Remember Paul Ryan? Remember what a deficit hawk Paul Ryan was? And he was not a winning addition to Mitt Romney's ticket. So if you say the right thing and it results in failure in life, it's worth considering. Perhaps it's best not to say the right thing.
Yeah. That's why I worry, because I don't think there is no magic solution. At least none of the thinking that I hear from anybody now. It's going to have to be some sort of new thinking, because my crystal ball says, remember I told you about Palm Beach County, that it was now $150,000 was the pay for housekeepers with references. Okay, I think that trend of like everything is just gonna you're gonna get paid double, but everything you're buying costs triple. You get what I'm saying? The inflation, the pay raises are gonna keep going up, because people are gonna demand them the same way the Teamsters demanded that 72%. But the cost of living is gonna go up so fast that you're chasing something that you can't ever catch. It just gets further and further away. And as long as they've got people willing to stream across the border and play the game, who's going to change? They talk a good game, but who's closing that border? You get what I'm saying? And you hide and watch. They're going to put a camera. They talk about getting rid of 22 million people, and you hear people say that. I can't see the politician that's going to watch a kid getting separated from its parents or some kind of dramatic bullshit that the libs are going to stage, like they always stage stuff. They're going to stage something that's heart-wrenching or whatever, and that'll be the end. Those 22 million people will be here unless they've committed like felonies, aggravated felonies.
Okay, so I remember when Donald Trump was running in 2015 and 2016, there were a lot of people who sounded like you who said to me and said to the world, there's no way that Donald Trump is going to follow through on his promises. And my response was, there is no way that Donald Trump is not going to make some progress towards his promises. And Donald Trump made some progress towards his promises in the 2016 campaign. And I guarantee you, he will make some progress towards his promises in 2020. Right now, it's very likely that Republicans will win the presidency, will retain the House, and will flip the United States Senate. We will have Republicans in all parts of the election, right, winning out in the presidency, the Senate, and the House of Representatives. And I guarantee you that there will be a reduction in refugee intake. I guarantee you that just as we saw under Donald Trump in his first term, there will be a reduction, a substantial reduction in illegal immigration. I suspect there will also be a reduction in legal immigration. I suspect that we will have lower crime rates. And these are the things that are most important to me. So I guarantee you that Trump will make some progress in his promises. Right? Obviously, he's not going to fulfill them 100%. But if Trump even accomplishes 10% of his promises, then we're going to be far better off. America was far better off under Donald Trump than under Joe Biden. And Axios is doing a series of articles on what's going to happen if Trump wins. And Axios notes Trump's immigration policies would echo nationally and quickly. The wall along the southern border would be expanded. Efforts to curb both legal and illegal immigration would accelerate. New barriers would be placed on asylum seekers. Deportation would intensify. There would be a cut to refugee admissions. Donald Trump has promised to round up millions of people here illegally. His private advisors say privately that there will be a much more tempered version of this draconian threat. But for every one person that you deport, it discourages another 20 people from coming over that border. We may very well get mandatory e-verify for businesses. We may well get stronger penalties for sanctuary cities. We'll likely get legislation that restricts immigration. We're going to likely reduce the flow of immigrants into this country. And I guarantee you that that Trump will make some progress on his promises, particularly with regard to immigration. And 90% of what he needs to do, he can do under executive action. He doesn't need Congress to go along. He can start building that wall just by virtue of executive action. So will he fulfill his promises 100%? Obviously not. Will he fulfill them 10%, 15%, 20%, 30% in some areas? Yes, I think he will.
I would take that. I would be happy with it. I will caution you for being not to be too optimistic, because Trump's got that charisma that Kamala Harris, and really I don't see anybody that has it to the level of Trump on the Democrat side. But I don't see anybody that has it on the Trump side either.
How am I being optimistic? I said he will do something. It might be even just 5% of what he says. Reckoning that a politician might go 5% in progress to fulfilling his campaign promises is not exactly optimistic. I'd say that's pretty brutally realistic.
No. I don't think you're being optimistic. I'm cautioning you to be too optimistic of what lays past Trump, because from the moment he gets hired, he's only got 4 years, and then we're facing this same crisis. Let's just call it what it is, a crisis 4 years from now. And so who do we have waiting in the wings? Do you think J.D. Vance could be that guy?
Yes.
Or do you think,
yes.
Or do you think someone else has to be groomed to get that? We need that charisma, something to get people to go to the polls.
Yeah, I think J.D. Vance could be that guy. I think he's a big, bright star for Republicans.
No, everything you said about Trump is encouraging. I would like to see the 22 million illegals get gone. I'm not supposed to care about this, but it irks me when I look at, I guess it was the 1990 census and the 2000 census and the 2010 census and the 2020 census. The population of white people in America just sits there at like 194 million, 194 million, 194 million. It never moves. You get what I'm saying? The population of America goes up, but the population of white people does not. And it really, we live in a society where we import the Benetton colors of the world and women pull the plug on all the little white babies that we should have, bringing us up beyond 194 million. It hurts me. You get what I'm saying, Luke?
Yep.
It hurts me. It's the flower. The flower's getting snuffed at. I used to hear Aldous Huxley. Maybe I've mentioned this to you before. Aldous Huxley, the guy that wrote Brave New World, the guy that wrote that book, The Perennial Philosophy. I would hear him talk about before World War I and after World War I. And he talked about all the smartest classmates he had, most of the brightest teachers that he had. They were all gone. None of them came back from World War I. They were all gone. And when I see that 194 million, it's not as bad. It's not as bad as what happened in England, but the people who are keeping us at 194 million are the people in the trailer parks having 5.6 kids. It's not the right people keeping us at the 194 million. So let's hope Trump or somebody will do something to stem the tide on this scourge of abortion too. All right.
Okay, bro. Good to talk to you. Take care, man.
You too. See you, bro.